Here. Yeah, I see. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Unmuzzled, a podcast. Before we get to these amazing beagles and their stories, and also the story of Luna, who everybody's going to fall in love with, I already have presenting sponsors. Thank you so much to our presenting sponsors. Yutka Fence is a family-owned, trusted provider of high-quality fencing solutions with over 57 years of experience. They take pride in protecting what you love most and give back to rescues, shelters, and humane societies through their partnerships. They offer you a free, no-obligation estimate and use the highest quality materials. For transparency and peace of mind, visit Yutka Fence for all your fencing needs. Canine Cruise is the place to take your pet. They offer dog and cat boarding, dog daycare, pet retail, and mindful day school. Tons of indoor space and a huge yard. Canine Cruise is your one-stop shop for professional pet care in Chicago. Kiki's Korner Natural Pet Foods in downtown Winfield, just a block south of CDH Hospital on the railroad tracks. Kiki's has all your food and health aid needs for dogs and cats. Kiki's Korner for a healthy, happy pet. Thank you so much, presenting sponsors. I'm bringing Mary right in. Mary is with Cage to Couch, and Mary, I think I saw you comment on like a One Tail at a Time post or something, and I was like, oh, what's that? That's like probably like a really good podcast guest, and then I stalked you, and here we are. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So here's their website, cagetocouch.org. They're a nonprofit, so just like Live Like Rue, who many of you know if you listen to this podcast. And Mary is actually in California, so she is on the West Coast and does incredible work with beagles and abused, neglected animals. So a lot of what you're going to see and hear about is laboratory animals that have been tested on and neglected. Some have lived in cages for many, many years. And then there are some that are just left basically for dead. So they may end up in a shelter, neglected and abused. And there's Mary and Cage to Couch to help out. So Mary, before we get to any of this, I loved our conversation before because we were talking about beagles and how it takes like a special owner. And I had a basset hound and a basset hound. Anything in that hound family it's a very unique breed, and you've got to understand them. But you had mentioned you didn't even have beagles growing up. So tell me kind of about your history with animals and how this all came to be.
Yeah, I just, we always had dogs growing up and everything, but like I said, I never had beagles, and we weren't like beagle people when we got into rescuing them. It just kind of came about. I had a dog, a chocolate lab kind of mix, and when she passed away, we were just like, oh, so bereft, and like we had all this nurturing to give and nobody to give it to. So we started thinking we won't ever adopt again. It was just so painful and everything. But instead, we started looking, like I followed everybody on, social media, all the dog rescues and everything. And it just really occurred to us that we had, a home to give and everything, and it would be good to help. So I kind of had it in the back of my head about beagles being in laboratories, and that they sometimes you could adopt them. And so we adopted Minnie first, and we were just going to foster her. But really, when we met her, it was just like, oh no, we're going to adopt her right away. So that's how we kind of got into it. But like you said, they are kind of unique. Beagles are, and hound breeds are just kind of different if you haven't had one before. But Minnie was already 10 years old and blind, and she'd been made blind in the laboratory, whatever they did. So she wasn't exactly, a perfect example representative of her breed. So we've learned over the years now, because we've had many beagles come through the door, the challenge that they could be and how the breed is kind of a little different than the chocolate lab that we'd had before. They stay kids their whole lives, that's for sure.
As honestly, that's a brilliant way to put it. They're really stubborn too. Like ours was always stubborn. It took, over a year to house train her and house break her. And, and you're getting animals that you don't know their past, minus that they've been abused. So tell us how Cage to Couch started. I think it's amazing. A lot of us hear about these organizations, or we see a video of the first time a beagle sees grass or gets released from a cage, and those moments go viral because you can't believe how oppressed they were, I think is a good word, that they've never seen stairs, or they've never seen grass, or their feet have never touched anything but a metal cage. Is awful if you think about it too long and hard, which, Mary, I'm sure you do. But how did this organization come about?
Well, I had been when we got Minnie, we volunteered for the organization that we adopted her from, and then I actually went to work for them, and then I resigned and decided to start my own rescue, and that's how Cage to Couch came to be. So we got Minnie. We also got Maria from the same rescue. She's another little beagle. They're both now almost over 17 years old. They're both blind, and now they're both deaf. And so those are our beagles. And that kind of, I tell you, once you have adopted one, really all you can think about is, I want to get them all out. Like, I can't imagine a little Minnie being in a cage, being tested on. And she was basically for 10 years, right? And Maria was pregnant when we got her. Or she just had her babies before we got her. So 10 years old and pregnant. So they were using them as breeders. So that just kind of overwhelms you, right? You just think, what can I do to get them all out? If I could just fly around the world opening cages, or something. But so that kind of how it happens. It gets into you, right? And you think you just have to do more. And so we just started our own rescue. My sister and me started the rescue, and that's how it came to be.
I mean, that's pretty amazing. You and your sister really changing lives. I mean, it's perfect. For you, because I run a nonprofit for animals with cancer, and it is a lot of, every day is a roller coaster. It's really tough. Unfortunately, there's more tough moments and celebrations and chemo celebrations. But when you kind of sit back and think about what you've done, how proud are you of all of these amazing beagles? And we're going to talk about the other dogs too, that you've already saved and that have been adopted or in a foster home or have, gone through your doors and then on to another life.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if proud is the right word. I mean, I really think that we're kind of just the facilitators, right? We negotiate with the labs, or we go to the shelter and pull them out, but it's really, we're a foster-based rescue, right? So we don't have a facility except for our house, where we have a few too many at any given time. But basically they go right into a foster home. So it's those people that, are willing to say, yeah, bring that dog in. We know nothing about them. We don't know how they're going to react. Are they going to, they don't tend to be aggressive, but they can really have some trauma that they're dealing with and have to work through. And those people are really willing to upside down their lives to take them in. And it usually is kind of life-changing for them. I mean, it almost always is, right? Once they've done it, and they get, such reward from it, but it's a lot. They go through a lot, and it's a challenge, and they're kind of the real heroes, right? They're the ones who make it possible for us to say yes.
Yeah, and I think just showing that picture of one of the laboratory dogs with other dogs, we always hear that helps, other dogs that are completely broken to kind of learn how to dog. So I know you mentioned, reaching out. So how do you get, or how do you, and we've all heard of Envigo, which Envigo, I think is how you say it, from 2022, where you got a bunch of beagles. And I love looking at your website and seeing all of those success stories, because it's that's amazing. But how do you, if it was just a normal day and not a huge beagle release like that, how do you find out about the beagles?
Well, you actually uh, do a lot of research. It's kind of like Googling and going down rabbit hole after rabbit hole because it's hard to find the contacts at the laboratories. They don't like publish their emails. They don't, say who they are, except for like at the major universities and that kind of thing where you can find the people. But you kind of have to just convince them and influence them. It's kind of a hard because we, of course, would like animal testing to come to an end, and we'd like them all to be released. And you're dealing with scientists and everything, and business people who make money from this, and you have to kind of, meet them where they are. So you can't be too, can't say too many bad things about what they do. You just have to, we just put forth that if they're end of study and they're still, viable and could live out in the world, that we will take them. And we always say, well, we won't divulge where they come from. We won't, it won't be any cost to you. We'll incur all the costs of transport, and do even all the vetting. Usually they will do some, but often they come to us and they're not spayed or neutered or vaccinated or anything like that. So
It's just
that's how we do it.
heartbreaking. Yeah, it's so heartbreaking to think how many you don't reach, or that
Yeah.
you didn't reach the right person. I think that's about like, okay, does something click in that person's mind that day to say, oh, Benny over here, pretty much we're done with. Let's contact the rescue. And I'm sure there are people there that say, absolutely not. We want nothing to do with this. If this leaks out that this is happening, which is so tough for you. It puts you in a really tough position. So I know, a lot of times you don't know what they've been through, but can you kind of give us just a few stories, maybe one of your favorites where you've got this broken beagle? And usually a lot of times probably it's more the emotional than anything physical going on with them. You don't really know until you get to the vet. But can you just give us some examples of how they come out of these labs?
Yeah, it can be really different. Like in Vigo, everybody I know going into it, we were like, oh, well, they weren't tested on, so they might not have those same kind of traumatic PTSD that the laboratory beagles do. But actually, in Vigo, they had such horrific conditions and what they went through that they were some of the worst. Had some of the worst trauma that I've seen probably. Other than like some of the major universities. And I think it's because the major universities, they really adhere to very strict guidelines, right? So they're in a cage by themselves, probably really don't get out of the cage at all. And then the testing could be really kind of extreme. Sometimes when you do with private laboratories, it can be like flea and tick medicine and that kind of thing. And they're sometimes housed like 3 and 4 in a cage. I'm not saying that it's any better or anything, but they will have a different kind of trauma when they come out, a different thing that they're dealing with, or past trauma rather. So we've seen, I can tell you, I think it was the end of 2023 when we went and picked up 7 beagles, 6 boys and 1 girl from a laboratory. And they were like some of the most difficult beagles I've ever dealt with. We actually drove and stayed overnight at a adopter's home. She'd adopted an Vigo beagle from us previously, and she was in New Mexico, and we overnighted there. And I landed at this person's home at like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night with 7 beagles all in crates. And I'd actually helped get them in the crates to go, and we had to like put blankets over them. Like you couldn't catch them. They had to get somebody who was on vacation and bring them in to help get these beagles into the crates to travel. like you could not touch them. You could not put a collar on them, and they would. A few of them were quite snappy because of fear, not aggression, but their reaction was to snap. So when you would try to put a collar on, you were going to get bit. So I got there late at night, and a kind of older lady and me carried them all in, and I was like, I can't let them out of the crate tonight. Like, it's late at night and everything. I kept them in the crates. They in my bedroom, 7 of them in crates. And in the morning, I really was just thinking, let's just put them in the car, because I don't know, or in the van, because I don't know that we'll be able to ever get them back in the crates. Like, I just have to get going and get home to Southern California. So, I mean, I realized that was terrible, but I also couldn't, lose them or anything. And she was like, we were just like, we can't do that. Her yard was gorgeous. It was huge. And we opened those crates and let all those dogs out. And it took us like 5 or 6 hours, and we had to call in help, like her son and all these people had to come. I ran to the store to get rotisserie chickens to try to have something to lure them. I'm sorry, my sister my phone's going off. So yeah, to get them back in those crates. And then this nice woman, and she is quite elderly. One of them she fell in love with. She couldn't even touch him, but she was like, she kept one. So I came home with 6, left one there, and it took her months. And she got bit several times before she could ever like get a collar on him, walk him, or anything like that. And all of them, another one I brought back with me, his name was, I can't remember what it was at the time, but now the adopters named it Brewster. And she lives right here in California. And he went through 2 or 3 fosters before he got to her. And I would like this foster fell through. They just couldn't handle him. You could not touch him. And she was like, let me give it a try. And by gosh, now he's like with her pack. She has quite the pack, and she could touch him and everything. So those were probably the worst. I hate to say worst, but you know what I mean? They were like the most difficult, challenging that I've ever dealt with.
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, you take just the beagle mentality and then you add, fearing, because they don't know. They don't know what the world is about. It is definitely a thing. So I wanted to note too, because we kind of skipped this part. When you take the animals, you give them the medical care that they need. So some of your donated money goes to medical care to get the beagles checked, depending on where they came from or whatever animal. I shouldn't keep saying beagles because you rescue more than beagles, which we'll get to Luna in a second. But then you also, need foster homes, which is the most important key to any rescue that does not have a brick and mortar, is foster homes, which obviously you need very specialized fosters that you can trust for this. And then so you are actually like a rescue as well.
Oh, right. Absolutely. That's what we are. And when we say, like, we're an all volunteer, right? So when donations come to us, it's pretty much all veterinary care, right? And then the supplies that you give to fosters and that kind of thing. But we get a lot of in-kind donations for that kind of thing. They get sent off with a foster pack, because I just feel like they've had nothing all their lives. The first thing we always do is name them, because they've never had a name. And we know that the fosters and adopters will change the name, but it is when we get told, yep, we're going to let you take 8 dogs out, 8 beagles. The first thing we do is come up with our names. Like that, finally you get a name, right? And then it always means a lot to me to send them off with their little pack, that they get toy and treats and something of their own, right? A blanket and that kind of thing. So, but donations go, we have a vet that we work with, Dr. Ash at University Veterinary Center, and he's pretty much taking care of all our beagles when they come here. Before we have some who have been adopted out of state and that kind of thing, but they usually all go through their vetting with Dr. Ash.
Yeah. So amazing to have a great vet partner. I know the beauty of that is just so nice to have somebody that can understand and be patient and really like see them through to adoption, hopefully. I think too, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about shopping cruelty free. I hate when people say, well, I'm not going to make a difference. Yes, you are. You will make a difference. I did a great podcast with people about farm, runoff from farm water polluting everything. And, I've stopped eating meat, and you really can do something. When I had those people on the podcast, I was kind of really battling between, stop eating meat, being more vegetarian. And then it happened. And then we did a follow-up podcast. I'm like, you guys will be proud of me. And, they said that does make a difference. So can you, Mary, just talk a little bit about that? Because again, you don't always know where the beagles came from, but we talked about flea and tick. Obviously, that's a whole other thing, but we know about makeup, we know about lotions and that kind of thing. And it doesn't take that much to research who is cruelty free.
No, it really doesn't anymore. You can go to Cruelty Free Kitty or Cruelty Free International, or there's some apps that you can have on your phone. But I looked at it as like, when we got Minnie and we first started thinking about, we didn't know anything about being cruelty free, but believe me, you're not going to be like, oh, let me go give money to this company that tests on animals and then look at Minnie and be like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. So I looked at it as like, oh, good, a chance to shop. I have a reason to buy all new stuff. So yeah, it is the first thing that you can do. It's something that you could do, like you don't have to donate, you don't have to foster, you don't have to adopt, but it's the kind of first thing you could do to send the message. And it does change things. How many companies have become, going cruelty free? I'm thinking like Dove. I just bought Dove shampoo and I hadn't bought Dove for years. And then they finally went cruelty free, and I think they don't sell in China, or they sell in China. That's always the biggie, right? That you'll be cruelty free here, and then you find out, they sell in China. And that means that there's testing, but laws have changed. Even in China, they've changed what they do and how the guidelines are. So you have to do your research. But all you can do is try, right? And try your best. And shopping cruelty free is huge, because dollars are the bottom line, really. It's always about money in the whole world, right?
Yeah, so true. And, I just think of a beagle in a cage for 6 damn years. And if that doesn't do it for you, then I don't know what will, but it really is a sad state. So I wanted to just quickly, before we get to Luna, touch on Envigo a little bit, because what was that like for you? Because I feel like, and actually some of my friends here in Chicago got some of those beagles, but besides Uno winning Westminster, which I really do believe, even though I had beagles before that, really people were like, oh, that dog is awesome and I want one. It did really a service to the breed. But then when you see something like Envigo and you see all of these hounds being released to what you said, really cruel, how was that for you? And how many did you end up taking?
Well, Envigo was huge for us because we'd pretty much just launched, right? We got our paperwork and everything in April of 2022. And we're just we thought, you know what we'll do? We'll start with one dog at a time out of the shelters while we negotiate with labs and finally get a lab to agree to, release to us. And we'll just start slow. And instead, Envigo happened. And the first, I think it was August 1st, we got 15 beagles out of Envigo, which, there's some organizations that are huge that took hundreds. So we took 27 total in the month of August, and that's what we took for Envigo dogs. So that's a pretty tiny little amount of it, but it was huge for us, right? Yeah. 27 dogs in 1 month, and pretty much your first month of operation was a big deal. And we had so many of them in our home. I have some videos that it's kind of hysterical how many beagles were in my home at a time, with my 2 little blind ones surrounded by them. It was kind of funny, but they were, for the most part, beagles are seriously some of the sweetest dogs, even when they're dealing with the challenges. Some of them, like I'd find one in my closet just hiding, and you kind of just let them be and adapt on their own. I'm really not one for pushing them. into anything. So anyways, we had a lot come through here, and it was a fun, crazy time. When I look back on my phone, that's, all the pictures and videos are still there, and I've been looking for them to do some different things that we're doing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what a whirlwind it's been ever since we started.
I mean, you really started out with a bang too. It's like, let's go. We're going now.
Well, we had a couple that were like, oh my gosh, they would just sit in a corner. One of them would snap at us. But then when you took her, like I took her into bed with me, and she would sleep curled up right against my neck. But then she would, they go through these weird things where, like, in another position, then she's scared, and you just don't know what it is. So
a quick question. I'm not sure. I'm assuming you know this. Do you know why they choose beagles to test on?
They do. I mean, it's a long story, because people will tell you, oh, it's because they tend to be a very forgiving dog. They're the right size. They don't tend to be aggressive. It's not like something they're known for. But it really is, if you research it way back when, it's like they all had to come to an agreement on what they were going to use, so that it would be the standard across the industry, right? And they decided on the beagle, sadly, because it really is the right size, the most forgiving. Certainly not because they're a lot like people. They're not any more like people than any other animal. And they fail. What they test on them fails, I think, over 90% of the time once it gets to human trials. I mean, it is really not a great model for what we're doing. And I mean, they did it way back when that's all they had, right? And it makes sense. But we should have come a lot farther, a lot faster. We shouldn't still be using animals like this. But
yeah, I mean, it's just going totally backwards. It's ridiculous.
Right.
It's really frustrating. So thank you so much for what you do. So anyway, the Cage to Couch is not just about beagles, and this was like a hard stop when I went to your Facebook page. This dog, Luna, is simply incredible. So tell us her story, because it is heartbreaking as well.
Yeah, she is a great story. And she's actually right here with me. She's in our home. I don't know if we're going to be able to give her up. So I got the call, and it came as an email from the shelters. You get them all day long when you're a rescue and you're a partner with all of them in the counties and everything. And I hadn't checked my email. And so I think it had come like at 11 o'clock. They got this 7-week-old puppy in that morning. She was in such bad shape. If somebody didn't get her, if a rescue didn't take her by 4 p.m., they would have to euthanize her, just because they could not deal with her medical issues. And that would be the humane thing to do, right? And so I'm in Anaheim, and I don't know how much you know about it, but she was like in Van Nuys, which is up in the valley. And by the time I read it, like, I would have never made it there by 4 p.m. to get her. She had a severely fractured skull, nose, jaw, and her face was all swollen up. She was filled with infection from it. So I called one of our board members who lives in the valley, and he didn't have a car that day, so he took a Lyft to the shelter to get her. And I, called the vet, and we wouldn't have her by the time they closed that night. And so it was just pretty much like, is she going to make it through the night? My sister went up and got her up there and brought her home, and we really didn't think that she'd even live through the night, but she did. And the next morning, she, of course, went right to the vet, and she was at the hospital for weeks. Like, she had a fight for her life. She was one sick little girl, first to get that infection. We did her CT scan, I think, just a couple weeks afterwards, and they, said like, well, her face is just completely broken. But first we have to get her through this infection, and she could never survive any kind of operation. And plus her bones are changing, so you can't really operate at that point. Like, what are you going to do? So it was really just Dr. Ash was incredible with her. I have the video of him where he made it himself for her to be able to breathe, because what happened is she couldn't breathe, right? She can't like get rid of her snot. She can't swallow it. And so she's just constantly full of snot, and she would panic, like, I can't breathe. And he explained to me that puppies are, I can't think of the term for it, but they breathe through their nose, not through their mouth. And so she didn't know how to do that. Like, I can't get any breath through my nose. I don't know how to breathe. And she would panic and she would faint. So anyways, he made this little apparatus that's stuck in her mouth, and she would get such relief from that, because it was like, oh, I can finally breathe, and she could go to sleep. Yeah, she's been something. Now she's 55 pounds. She just had another CT scan, because we do think she'll have surgery, that they'll be able to maybe do some kind of repair so that she can basically not have a nasal infection all the time, because she kind of takes antibiotics, and we try not to. She'll go months without them. We use a humidifier a lot. We try to teach her to blow, to sneeze. Like, we encourage that. Oh yeah, sneeze, get snot all over the house. That's great. Yeah, that's where we're at. So right now we're actually hunting for a surgeon. We don't actually have one in the area that we think would take on her case. So we're kind of in that process.
Wow. I mean, just incredible work. I'm so inspired by you. It's so sad. It makes me cry. Thank you, Mary.
She is the sweetest dog. Like I told you, I have 2 beagles who are blind and deaf, 17 years old. I have Hazel, who's actually, she had insulinoma cancer. She had a pancreatic cancer. Dr. Ash operated on her in 2020, and it's amazing. She should never still be alive, but she is. She's been on chemotherapy for 2 years. And he's with them. Luna's with those 3 dogs and our kitties, and she's perfect with everybody. She's just a super sweet dog.
You always wonder, and yet you're never shocked when these dogs that have had horrible abuse somehow trust humans still. I mean, it's remarkable. You see it every single day. It's great. And any dog that you have with cancer that comes through there, we got you. So please let me know. You have my contact information for that. I would love to pay those bills. We always will help rescues 100%. That's our goal at Live Like Brew Foundation. So, Mary, thank you for everything you do. This has been an amazing podcast. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate what you do too.
Thank you, Mary. From Cage to Couch, everybody go check them out. By the way, that's a 501c3, so go donate, go volunteer if you're in California. Please foster. That's probably 100% the most important thing.
Absolutely.
That means you can save more dogs. So thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you. You have a good night. Thank you.
You too. What a wonderful organization. I'm so glad I stalked her and found her. Mary, everybody. It doesn't get better than that. Saving beagles from that BS that's going on. Supporting sponsors, thank you. Thank you so much to our supporting sponsors. On the corner of Montrose and Troy in Chicago's Irving Park neighborhood, you'll find a hidden gem known as Templestowe Pub. They have a great selection of local draft beers, and the Malort is always flowing. Oh boy. Join us for charity bingo nights or tap takeovers with local breweries. Don't want to leave your dog at home? Bring them with you. Whether you're throwing darts or playing a banger on the jukebox, you're guaranteed to have an awesome time. Head on over to 3135 West Montrose and look for the old style sign. The Canine PT is Chicago's highest rated dog physical therapy clinic, and they're dedicated to enhancing the lives of your 4-legged companions as they age or while recovering from an injury. There is no better gift than pain relief and extended mobility for your furry friends. They also offer a discount for rescue dogs. For more information, visit thecaninegt.com. Intuitive animal behavior dog training, positive reinforcement, force-free and fear-free training solutions for every single dog. Jenna offers individual training, behavioral boarding, shelter support, and positive reinforcement board and train services. Creating an environment that is happy and healthy for your pets is so important. For more information, go to her website, intuitiveanimalbehavior.com. Thank you, sponsors. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, Mary, an amazing guest. Go check out cagetocouch.org, a nonprofit organization doing amazing work on laboratory beagles and abused and neglected animals. I'm So proud to know her. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. I'll see you next week. Bye.